Hey Mason families, it's so good to see you again and connect with you again. We are coming to the end of our first quarter, believe it or not, and we have a season that's changing in this beautiful fall weather. And so we wanted to go ahead and give you some updates this week on what's going on around the district. We are so grateful for the engagement that we have seen from Governor DeWine and his office. We have heard from the Director of Health, Lance Himes. He actually jumped on a Zoom call, looked at our data. They're so interested in our data right now because obviously we've not had data like this before. So they were watching our data closely and aligning that with the science. And so they're looking at the protocols that we have in place in our schools, and it appears that wearing masks in schools and all the protocols that we have are working. We are not seeing an uptick in the positive cases. And they also understand and are very empathetic to the situation that we have with students being out quarantined without symptoms. And so they're working on some solutions. I actually just heard from the Lieutenant Governor yesterday, who was gracious enough to give me a call and to talk through our situation again and to reassure that they are looking at it closely and that they understand the urgency that we have here at Mason City Schools, but not just here. This is actually a situation that's starting to play out in communities all across the state and actually multiple states. And so it's great to see that our governor is interested in our data and trying to make a change that could benefit all of us, that could allow our students to be in school. And that's where we feel like is best for them since they chose the in-person experience. As we find ourselves in this challenging situation with the quarantine, and you've heard me talk about that, so I won't go into detail about what the challenge is there, but just remember that we have 400 students that have already been through a 14-day quarantine. That number is a big number at our high school, and those students are now in jeopardy of a second quarantine because as they come back, based on their seating placement, they could be quarantined for another 14 days. That's 28 days potentially that they're not in person, and that's the choice that they made at the beginning of the year to be in person, that learning. Now that's a challenge that we are definitely working with the governor's office on to try to find a longer term solution, but we do have some short term solutions, and I'll be transparent with you and tell you these aren't our favorite solutions, but they are short term solutions to help those students specifically to possibly avoid a second quarantine. So the first one is preferential seating. So we're giving some of those students a preferential seating. Now that doesn't work in every setting. If you have 7 students that have been out on quarantine, you can't just keep moving them around the classroom. The classroom's only so big, but it's something that we're trying in many of our rooms, and our teachers have been great about doing that. A second option is creating a safe space in our high school where we have a couple large areas in our high school still left that we can utilize to place the students in those rooms. They have that selection. That's up to them. It would be a choice, but they could be in that room to avoid being within 6 feet of anyone in their classroom, but still connect with their teacher throughout the day. And then a third solution, again, not our favorite solutions, but a solution looking at interscholastic postseason competition opportunities when our teams are going into postseason. So we're not forfeiting and not able to participate in those that our students have been working so hard all year in. We're giving them an option to do a 2-week proactive quarantine during that time. And that would apply for anyone that's a part of a band or sports during that postseason competition so that the whole team can continue to move forward in the things that they love. Obviously, these are not our favorite solutions. They're temporary solutions, and that's why we continue to advocate and work with the governor's office on longer term solutions. And we're so appreciative of the attention and the willingness to open that dialogue at the governor's office. We believe that this bigger solution is actually going to be great for all schools. It's not just Mason City Schools issue that we're talking about. This is for all schools around the state, and obviously those apply in other states as well. So we're hoping to see that longer term solution that aligns with data and the medical evidence, and so that we can get our kids back in school. As we continue to monitor the data and watch the different patterns that are coming in, there's several lessons that we're learning. And obviously we've had about 6 weeks of data to collect and look at closely. One of those patterns is we're noticing that the spread of COVID-19 is not happening in our classrooms, and we're so grateful for that. That's where we believe the mask and the distancing is working, and the cleaning that we have going on in our schools. Another pattern that we're noticing is that we're actually seeing more of the cases at our high school level. We're not actually seeing it go throughout the district at this point in time. So that is a pattern that we have noticed very clearly. Another clear pattern is that when we do have any kind of spread that we've noticed in our community with our students, typically there's a social event that they have been a part of. And I don't want you to think you can't have social events, because we're all going to have social events. Just continue to remember to keep yourself safe in those events and be thoughtful in the way that you conduct yourself in those events. Continue to talk to your students or your children about that, because we know that they're kids and they're humans and they want to connect. They just need to be thoughtful, because that's where we're seeing, if there is any pattern, that's where we're seeing that pattern come out of. Another question we get asked often is, are you seeing lots of different symptoms, and what are the common symptoms that you're noticing? And we do ask our families to share those with us. And so the common symptoms that we're seeing so far can range anywhere from a headache for a day, and these are symptoms that we're seeing from people that have tested positive, obviously, but it could be a headache for a day, it could be a cough or some sore throat, it could be some digestive issues. But fortunately, at this point in time, we've not seen anything dramatic or super concerning at this point, and we're so grateful for that, because we know that that's not the case everywhere, but it is the case with our kids at this point in time. The other pattern we're noticing is that we have not had any spread with our teachers. Our teachers have actually, and our staff, have followed their protocols very carefully, and it's kept them safe, and we're grateful for that as well. Remember, with all these patterns, and with it's very possible that many more people will experience COVID-19 at some point. That is just part of the nature of this. And we want to encourage you that there is a stigma around that at times, and I want to just take that stigma and push that aside and say, this is going to happen. It's going to happen just like we have all kinds of other things happen throughout the year with illness. And so please continue to talk to your kids about that, not to be scared of this, just to know that we are learning to live with this together as we move forward. And we want to wrap around and support people that are going through any of those moments. And we'll continue to do that and share with you any other patterns that we notice in the future. One thing we recognize about all of our students is that they all learn at a different pace. And that's one of the most exciting parts about what we get to do here at Mason City Schools and in schools across America, is we get to work with young minds, and all young minds have their own pace of learning, their own style of learning, their own interest, and that's the exciting part of what we get to do as educators. And so if you're a parent and you have students online, your children are online learning, and you're noticing that they're either finishing too quickly, or or maybe it's just they're struggling with the learning and they don't have enough time to complete all the work, just understand that that is a normal process. And what we would encourage you to do is keep the lines of communication open with our professionals, with our educators, the teacher that your child is working with, to let them know either way, to let them know if your child is finishing too quickly and they're feeling bored, or to let them know that, boy, this is really challenging for my kid. And that will change based on subjects, based on the time of the year. So keep those lines of communication open, and make sure that we know how we can best serve you. Part of this is the whole conversation we've been having for the last several years is around personalized learning, because we recognize, even in our classrooms before COVID-19, that students learn at different paces. They learn in different ways. And so that's the power of the personalized learning approach, is that we are trying to personalize that approach to serve you and to serve your child through this learning process. So please reach out to us and allow us to serve you in that way. As you know, this year is very different. We have online students, we have in-person students, and one question that has been brought to our attention is, will our online students be able to take their test at home online? And the answer at this point in time that we have received from the state is, the answer is no. They'll actually take that here in person. And I know that brings on probably a lot of questions for our online students and families, and just know that as we organize and we learn more about that process, we will share that information with you soon. One, I guess, good thing about this whole process is we are seeing that the state is, for example, in the third grade guarantee, they are not taking the third grade test and attaching that to retention. And that is one small move towards local control. That's one thing that we've asked them to do, and we'll continue to advocate that our state testing, especially during this season, is not tied to some of the high stakes pieces that have been in the past, where they compare schools across the state. We're hoping to use it as a baseline to understand and what can we learn from this experience, whether you're online or in person. We recognize that this has not been easy. It's not been easy for anyone in this situation, and we know that there are still students and families struggling with the new normal, whether you're in person or online. And I want to remind, especially our online learners, we know that there is a huge desire to connect with other human beings. That's part of who we are as people. That's what makes us a strong community. And so I want to remind you that we do have mental wellness support services. And it's not just for our in-person students, it's for our online families. So if you need those services, or you need us to connect with you, or you're not feeling connected, please continue to reach out to the teacher that you're assigned to, reach out to your building counselors. Let us know how we can serve you, because we want our community, even though we have a big portion online and a big portion in person, we want to stay connected, and we want people to, especially our students, to feel safe and supported as we move through this year. So please help us to be a good partner with you as we move through these times, especially if you are finding that you're struggling with this at any point in time throughout this season. As we started off this video, just recognizing that the seasons are changing, and believe it or not, we're coming to the end of the first 9 weeks. And one question is, well, when do we find out about next semester? And right now is the time for you to start that conversation in your home. It's going to be different than this summer. This summer we were asking people to enroll and to pick a choice. At this point, we're asking you to decide if you're going to make a change. So this is really open for families that are thinking of switching their current assignment from online to in-person, or in-person to online. So we're hoping, now that you've had some experience in this, and we have as well, and we've learned a lot, that this will actually be an easier process for you. I know it was a hard decision before because we were making decisions without ever experiencing any of this. But now that we have this experience behind us, we hope this is easier. But I would encourage you to begin having that conversation at home about whether or not is this something that we feel like you want to switch in your home to go from one placement to the next. I know that's a big decision for some of our families. And so you're going to hear more information come out next week, even about the timeline and some of the things that you need to be thinking about. And as we go through the next few weeks, we'll continue to share information so that we can support those families that are deciding to make a switch in placement. Thank you again for tuning in today and listening to this video. And as always, if you know other families that haven't watched this video or don't know the information, please help us to spread this information so that people have accurate information in our community so they can make great choices and support each other through this season.